The children and I reread the letter again, and it seems that it said everything we wanted. My teenage children hugged me. My daughter was the first to look up at me. "Do you think she'll make the right choice, Dad?" she asked thoughtfully. I frowned. "I hope so, for the sake of all of us," I replied without much conviction. My son looked at us. "It's unlikely," he said sadly. "Well, who knows? Your mother may come to her senses." Having said that, we packed our bags and suitcases and went to our house by the sea. We were going there for the weekend, so now it's just going to be a move. We'll see. The cameras in the house were set up to see everything that was going on. You can watch the broadcast on my phone. 2 hours later, when we were unpacking our things, my phone informed me that there was someone in the house, or rather in the kitchen. The alarm went off, and the remote camera came to life. We saw my wife reading a letter alone, and then we saw her fall to the floor. At first, I was a little stunned. This shouldn't have happened. Expecting my wife to faint was not in my plans. I watched for a few more minutes, and finally, my wife moved and sat down. Then she slowly stood up, and I saw that tears were flowing down her face. She picked up the letter again and read it once more. She seemed to shake herself, then began to shout loudly at herself. "How stupid you are!" she exclaimed. She looked around the kitchen and, seeing my wedding ring on the table, screamed in pain. "What have I done? I'm such a fool. I hope it's not too late." She continued to berate herself, then the doorbell rang. She turned and walked out of the kitchen to the front door, passing by our set of carving knives. She took the largest of them and headed into the corridor. The camera in the hallway started recording. I saw my wife open the door, and a young man, probably in his 20s, staggered through the door. He regained his balance and opened his arms. "Honey, now I'm here. Where's your hubby?" My wife came up to him and put a knife to his throat. "You have no idea what you've done. You've ruined my marriage, and it looks like most of my family will disown me." I was damn stupid. I fell for your pressure. I almost believed that I had the right to sleep with you. I'm such a fool. I bet everyone at work is laughing their heads off. There was an expression of horror on his face. "Thank the hell I just kissed you. When my husband talks to me again as a husband or ex-husband, I will tell him how you tried to convince me that I needed you. I'll tell him it took you a year to finally convince me to sleep with you." He stepped forward, trying to push her away. "You asshole. I have nothing to lose now. My life is over, so it will be very nice to hurt you. And now, slowly step away, open the door, and leave. Never approach me at work or anywhere else." He slowly stepped back, opened the door with a trembling hand, turned around, and almost ran down the driveway. I saw the door slam, and then my wife leaned against the door, tears streaming down her face. Then she stood up abruptly and seemed to notice that she was wearing an evening dress that I hadn't bought her. She cut her dress with a knife, leaving herself in lacy black underwear that I bought her. She ran upstairs, the camera in the bedroom turned on. She went to my wardrobe and chose a shirt she had bought for me, put it on, and then went to her wardrobe. She put on a pair of old jeans, and then she started calling. My phone rang, and of course, it was my wife. "Yes, Carol, how can I help?" I said without any emotion. "Gary, I know you saw him in the house. I know you saw me almost kill him, and Gary, God knows I'd love to hurt him," she said, her voice carrying a manic note. "Carol, listen to me carefully. Our children don't want their mother to be in prison, and they don't want me to be in prison either. Now, I see that you're not thinking straight, so I'll tell you what to do. You will contact all our families, and you will apologize to them for being a expletive for a whole year." "Gary, yes, of course, I will. Gary, I'm sorry. I'm such an idiot. You know I didn't have sex with him. You know, if I thought for a moment that you were actually having sex with him, we wouldn't be having this conversation," I said in a strained voice. "Now, do as I say, contact everyone we know, and apologize to them. Tell them exactly why we're not together. I want everyone to know how stupid you are. Yes, Gary, I'll do as you say. Gary, just so you know that I really love you, and if you want a divorce, then I won't resist. It's the least I can do. But please don't cut me out of your life. She disconnected the call and then called her family, then my family, then her work colleagues, then our friends. My phone went berserk with 20 messages from friends and family, SMS from my wife's colleagues at work, and various people about whom I had no idea who they were. But the essence of these messages was what an idiot my wife was and how she could do this. My wife looked absolutely shattered. It seemed like every person she talked to was hitting her on the head. In the end, she just lay down, and I saw that she was motionless. I zoomed in and could see her breasts rising and falling. I sent a message to her phone, "Don't die. Take care of yourself. When you rest, pack a bag and come here. We need to talk." At the same time, I wrote a message to a friend from Eastern Europe. He was a bit rude but very loyal, and he had friends in the dark strata of society. The message said, "Yes, make it disappear." After he read the message, I deleted the message and all traces of it from my phone. Only my friend and I knew that I had sent the message. The meaning of the text is quite clear. Carol arrived 3 hours later. She looked tired and sad, but otherwise, she was fine. When she got out of the car, the children ran up to her and hugged her. "Mom, thank you for finally choosing us. We all missed you, even Dad, but he won't admit it," said Alice, our daughter, looking at me. At the same time, our son, Martin, hesitated for a moment and then looked at me. I nodded. He walked up to Mom and awkwardly hugged her, then stepped back. "Mom, it's good that you're here. I must admit, we didn't expect you to threaten your boyfriend," he said with a smile. Carol didn't know what to say. She looked at me and opened her arms. I hesitated for a moment and saw the pain on her face. "Dad, you won't get upset by hugging," Alice said with a smile. Of course, she was right. I stepped forward and hugged my wife, maybe for the last time, and she snuggled up to me and repeated, "I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry," over and over again. In the end, we let each other go. Martin picked up Carol's suitcase. He turned to me, "Dad, which room for the spare room?" "I'm sorry, Carol. I can't be with you at the moment, knowing that you were with that expletive," I said, trying to be calm. "Gary, I know you don't trust me, but I've never had sex with him," she said sincerely. "I want to believe you, but it's been a year since you were with me mentally. You left all of us, our friends, and family behind. So until you show me a health certificate, you'll sleep in a spare room. Just so you know, you can't just come back into our lives just because you threatened your boyfriend. I need more proof from you that you are the woman I married." "Gary, I'm so sorry. Don't we have any hope?" Tears were streaming down her face. "At the moment, we have very little chance. Sorry, Carol, but it all depends on you." I turned around and headed into the house, then went into the office and closed the door. I closed my eyes and tried to sort out my thoughts. One of the main problems was the lack of information, but tonight, I will find out everything. This will allow me to choose one way or another. I woke up to the smell of bacon, eggs, and fried bread. I stood up and stretched. I checked my phone. There were a lot of messages and voicemails. Most of them approved of my actions, but one or two persuaded me to forgive my wife. Then I saw a series of messages from an unknown number. The messages were clear: no sex with your wife. They only had kisses, no love, just wanted her. He slept with other married women and enjoyed it. Your wife was the only one he didn't sleep with, she kept refusing. His instrument is missing. It started 6 months ago, and before that, who knows? Ask your wife. My advice, if you still love her, then stay with her. Good luck. I read the messages carefully and replied, "Thank you. Good job." With the phone in my pocket, I went to the kitchen. My wife and children were looking at me. "Carol, we need to talk. It's long overdue." I should have sat you down and yelled at you a year ago, but it's easy to talk now, isn't it? Hope and fear were reflected on her face through tears. Gary, I'm giving you a free get-out-of-jail card, but you have to earn it. You will be the best daughter to your parents. You will be the best daughter-in-law to my parents. You will be the best friend to our mutual friends, and you will be diligent at work. And last but not least, you will be the best mother for our children. You will be the one who will take them to football practice, take them to parties, and support them in problematic situations. In general, you'll make up for all the expletive we've been through over the past year because of your emotional affair with this jerk. By the way, don't worry about him, he's not your concern anymore. Carol looked shocked for a moment. Gary, I don't know what to say. I really was a fool. I followed bad advice and was lied to. I'm also obviously very trusting. But if you give me a chance, I'll prove to you and everyone else that I'm not a hopeless case. She stood up, hugged me, and then stepped back. I love you, Gary. I always have, and I always will, and I will prove my love to you until I die. Martin coughed. Dad, take Mom upstairs and show her who's in charge here. My girlfriend likes it when I take control of everything, he said and laughed. I grabbed my wife by the hand and dragged her upstairs. I controlled the situation and really showed her who was in charge here. 2 weeks have passed, and Carol continues to show everyone, my family, her family, work colleagues, and children, especially to me, she deserves forgiveness. We go to restaurants and bars, and she dresses well but never behaves cheekily. She rejects any male attention. Her phone is always on, her tracker is always on. She tells me where she is going, even if she is with family or mutual friends. We meet as a couple or families, she never goes out alone. It's her choice, not mine. And the doctor who tested her for STDs did ask about her sex life and other lovers. I was there when she grabbed my hand and said, "This is my husband and my lover. No one else will ever compare with this man, he is my life." The doctor just grinned and shook my hand. Oh, and yes, Carol's potential boyfriend disappeared. No one was really looking for him. Apparently, several husbands divorced their wives because of him, and well, the police didn't work too hard since one of the injured husbands was an active policeman. Did he die a slow, painful death? No, he is not dead, he is disfigured and weak-willed. He is shunned wherever he goes, his life is a living hell. Do I trust Carol? No. Do I love her? Yes. Does she compensate me for being a terrible wife and mother for a year? Yes. Now, living in our house is never boring. Our children are growing up fast, and they have their own partners, but they still hang out with us. So, justice finally prevailed. Story 2. Here's my story. My wife and I were married for only a year and some months before we divorced. Bella and I met at a restaurant where I had gone to have dinner one evening. She was sitting at a table alone while waiting for her plus one who never showed up, and I thought of keeping her company. Though she wasn't in her best mood when we met, we had a nice conversation. After weeks of occasionally talking on Facebook, we had our first date, and everything from there was happily ever after. We married after a year of dating, and I earnestly believed Bella would be the last woman I would date. I was tired of going through the cycle of talking with different women who would cheat on me. We were almost like the perfect couple, and there was absolutely nothing wrong in our relationship. We treated each other with love and respect. Bella and I were both hardworking, and I loved her because she was career-focused and did everything she could to earn more. Unlike Bella, who was a full-time remote worker, I only stayed home on my day off, and I barely took days off because something always came up at work. My work demanded that I travel from place to work for our clients. Even with my busy schedule, I did my best to spend time with Bella. I had great plans for us, and with her collaboration, I knew we could have a beautiful and memorable future if I continued working so hard. Most of the time, I wasn't so pleased with my busy schedule because I missed spending time with Bella, and I didn't like it when she complained about my absence too much. To make up for always being away, I would buy her beautiful gifts and have flowers sent to her at home. Also, I didn't wait for special occasions before I took her to a fancy dinner or on a mini vacation. The sweet thing about Bella was she always knew how to reciprocate and make me feel loved, Then there was a time when I returned from a week of working in another state. Bella paid for a massage session and gifted me the latest release of Jordan sneakers. Aside from that gift, she cooked special meals, set up her home table for romantic dinners, and did other things. Because of Bella, I always looked forward to going home, but one day, I went home without informing her in advance, and our marriage took a different direction after that day. Usually, each time I returned from a trip out of town, I would tell Bella in advance so she could prepare for me or cook something. But that day, I dropped by her favorite restaurant and grabbed some takeout for us and a bottle of red wine. I wanted to be a pleasant surprise for her, but I ended up being the surprised one when I got to our house. I pulled over in the driveway as usual and walked into the house with the stuff I got. As soon as I entered, I noticed Bella was half-dressed, flustered, and sweaty, the kind of sweat that shows she was doing very hard labor. She was already acting all edgy, and when I asked her what was wrong, she said she acted that way because she was surprised to see me and she was sweaty and almost half-naked because of the summer sun. That felt very suspicious, but I almost believed her lie because it didn't even cross my mind that she could bring her affair partner to our house. As we were conversing about my trip and how I had to come home earlier than expected, I heard our backyard sensor go off. I wanted to look at the security cameras to see what was happening, but Bella tried to stop me. She said it was probably nothing and I shouldn't worry because the sensor had gone off 3 times already that day. That was odd coming from Bella because in the past, even if I wanted to sit in front of the computer and look at the security cameras all day, Bella never complained or tried to stop me. So, she literally ratted herself out when she tried to stop me from looking at the cameras. I actually ignored her and then looked at the security camera, and I saw our 2 dogs attacking a man in my backyard. I was shocked to see him, and Bella pretended to be surprised. She said he had broken into her house, and she was trying to catch him when I came home, and she didn't want to tell me so I wouldn't yell at her for not locking the doors. As much as that lie sounded believable, my gut told me something was wrong. I told her we should call the police, and as soon as I said that, she kicked against the idea. She said we shouldn't get the police involved or we would have to pay for our dogs attacking the man in the backyard. I was getting mad at this point, so I called the police and reported that someone was trespassing on our property. Shortly after the police arrived, I called the dogs off him, and Bella's affair partner came out of the place he had squeezed himself into. He had sustained injuries and told the police our dogs attacked him. When he said that, I told the police he had trespassed on our property, and that's why he got attacked. Bella's affair partner overheard me, and he started shouting that he had come to spend quality time with Bella and that he was with her the previous night. It turned out that Bella was having an affair with him, and she met him through the book club she belonged to. When he said that, Bella was horrified. She tried to shut him up in my presence, but the guy kept yelling and said he didn't want to be charged for trespassing when Bella invited him. That wasn't all. His affair with Bella had been going on for a while, and that wasn't his first time sleeping over. After her secret was exposed, Bella was so embarrassed because our nosy neighbors had come out to listen to everything. Words cannot express how I felt when I found out that the woman I was planning my forever with was having an affair in my own house. After the police left, I went inside the house and threw out her stuff out of anger. I retrieved most of the things I bought for her and set them ablaze. The neighbors were still there, and they watched as I publicly humiliated her. I threw out our wedding portraits and other things that reminded me of our union. She was even shameless to keep begging me to let her explain. She said she only invited him over so they could read a book together, and nothing was happening between her and her affair partner. I knew they were all lies and didn't listen to her. By the time I was done dumping her stuff outside, she had to call her younger sister to come and pick her up. I also left the house that day to clear my head. I went to my best friend's house, and after I had put myself together, I contacted a divorce lawyer to start preparing our divorce papers. In my life, I had never experienced that level of betrayal. She shattered me completely and destroyed the possibility of me ever loving or trusting a woman again. For nights, the memories haunted me, and the memories took a mental toll on me. Even after we divorced, I was still a shadow of myself, and it took me a long time to heal and forget about her. Even though 2 years have passed, I still feel that the next woman I might end up with will cheat on me again. Because of this, I keep shutting out or hurting every woman that comes my way. Anyway, I know it will take time for me to heal, and until that happens, I will focus more on working and earning more for the comfort of my future. OP, it's funny how dumb your wife thought you were. What man would believe that his wife brought in a man to sleep in his house overnight so they could read a book together? This is both hilarious and stupid. There's a possibility that the next woman you open up to might cheat on you, and there's also a possibility she might not. You just need to take your time and not rush into anything. I love that you're focusing more on working and earning more money. It might take a while to forget about everything, but don't let that ruin your chances of being happy and experiencing genuine love. I wish you all the best. Story 3. I, a 27-year-old male, was married to my ex-wife, a 24-year-old female, for almost 2 years before I found out she wasn't as faithful as she claimed. My wife and I met at the beach on a summer afternoon, and we had a fantastic time together. She had come with a group of male and female college friends. They were all law students but decided to take a little break from school. I was also with a few friends, so some of us interacted with my wife and her friends, and we got along well. While other people's conversations ended that day after we left the beach toward different destinations, my wife and I exchanged numbers and kept talking occasionally. Shortly after we met, we started dating and married 2 years later. Before my wife and I married, our relationship was not smooth. My wife came from a well-to-do background, and her parents gave us a very tough time. They were against my wife dating someone like me and told her she would be making a grave mistake if she ended up with me. They said so because I worked 12 hours a day, had 2 different jobs, and couldn't get a good-paying job no matter how hard I tried. Her parents were a pain in the ass, but because we loved each other, we vowed to get married with or without her parents' approval. After months of her parents trying to separate us, they stopped and accepted our relationship. With her parents out of our way, I expected we would not have any other issues, but I had no idea more was coming. 2 months before we married, my wife cheated on me with one of her classmates and confessed to me. She said it happened by mistake and the guilt had been eating her up. Meanwhile, I had noticed during the time she claimed it happened that she was always looking sad and somehow depressed. Each time I questioned her to find out what was bothering her, she would say she was okay. When she confessed that she had cheated on me with her classmate and couldn't explain how it happened, I forgave her. Now that I share my story, I regret making such a mistake and wish I was smarter. I believed she wouldn't do it again because I felt if she came clean by herself and didn't wait for me to find out, then she was genuinely sorry. This was very hard on me, but because I was young, stupid, and in love, I forgave her, and she promised it would never happen again. We continued with our wedding and were married for almost 2 years. Though we never discussed her escapade with her classmate again and never left my head, I remembered her confession every day but never mentioned it or talked about it. I tried my best to let it remain in the past because she had moved on, and she was trying her best to be my perfect wife. She was extremely nice to me, pampered me, and treated me like the only man in the world. I don't know if it was her way of saying sorry for what she had done, but irrespective of everything she did, each time I looked at her, I wondered if she was still sleeping with him behind my back. It got to the point where I began to feel bad because I thought I was still holding on to the past, and I wasn't enjoying our marriage like I should have. It took me a whole year after we married to forcefully put everything behind me and go with the flow. I knew I had not cared for her like I had initially planned from the beginning of our relationship, so I started making little efforts like making breakfast in bed for her and fixing dinner for us before she returned from work. My ultimate plan was to do something very special for us on our 2nd anniversary, and I looked forward to it. Eventually, the day of our 2nd anniversary arrived, and I made all the preparations to sweep her off her feet and at least make up for the times I didn't treat her right. I even got a costly gift, the dress she would wear, and accessories to go with it. I went home early that day from work and waited for hours for her to return. When she didn't return home as I expected, I called her to ask why, and she said one of her professors had fixed an impromptu class, and she couldn't miss it because attending the class came with a score. I felt disappointed when I heard that but didn't try to argue. I expected that, since it was our wedding anniversary, she wouldn't want to miss a special occasion like that. I can't explain why, but that feeling of her doing something behind my back crept up again, and I couldn't shake it off this time. To be at peace with myself, I decided to check her Snapchat location, and it was different from the location she schooled at. I didn't believe it at first, but after checking thrice, I realized my wife had been lying to me again. I went to the location without wasting time, and it rang a bell. It was the same apartment her classmate, whom she slept with before we married, lived in. I'd lie if I said I could explain how I felt that evening. Being heartbroken or disappointed would not describe it enough. I wanted to storm into the apartment and confront her, but I had a better idea. I called her proud parents to come over to the apartment so we could surprise her for our anniversary. I knew they would come because they would do anything for their only child. Not long after I called, her parents arrived, and we went to the apartment to say surprise. As soon as we knocked on the door and her lover came to open it, her parents saw her walking totally naked inside the house. Her father yelled her name, and her mother pushed her affair partner aside and charged in. I'd love to say that everything was disastrous that evening. She didn't know if she was begging me or her parents. I watched her as her mother screamed and questioned her, and her father stood there in shock after she covered herself with the sheets. I didn't say much. I only told her it was over between us and that her cheating on me again was my fault. She didn't understand, and I didn't bother explaining. I don't know what happened between her and her parents after I left. She came home later that week and asked if we could talk. When I said no, she picked up the things she needed and left the house. She didn't even press for me to let her explain. I didn't know what to think or assume when she acted that way. Before she came home to take her stuff, I had already contacted a divorce lawyer, and when the papers were ready, she signed them without hesitation. Until today, I still wonder if she ever loved me like she claimed or was only enjoying the power struggle with her parents. The last time I tried stalking her on Facebook, she posted a picture of her and her affair partner with a mushy caption. I was so angry, and I blocked her instantly. Because of that picture, I quit sulking and wondered if she loved me. I saw how happy she was, and I felt stupid for still living in the past and putting my life on hold. I am fine now and have moved on faster than expected. I also realize that we have power over our emotions, and feeling miserable because of a cheating spouse should never be an option. I no longer care about her. All I care about now is me and my future. It's unfortunate that your ex-wife was playing with your emotions. I don't think she loves you or valued what you both had. If she did, she would not have ditched your second anniversary to be with the same person she cheated on. No one deserves to go through the emotional roller coaster you did. It was even very smart of you to move on faster after you saw her happy Facebook post. Don't worry, her karma will come when she least expects it. Keep focusing on yourself and your future. That's the most important thing. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Story 4. My wife and I had been married for 20 years. I genuinely thought that I had found the person with whom I was going to spend the rest of my life, and I was very thankful for her. We met through mutual friends and hit it off. My buddy kept telling me that he knew someone I would get along with, and he was right. When we got together, it wasn't an official date by any means. We were just hanging out at my friend's house, playing some board games. My wife was being weirdly competitive, and I thought it was adorable, so I ended up asking her out. We had a lot in common, and we really enjoyed spending time together. Marriage was a no-brainer for us. When it came time for it, we both wanted a family. We wanted that classic white picket fence life. We were young when we got married because we wanted to start a family. My wife was adamant about not wanting to be an old grandmother, which I thought was kind of funny. She wanted to be able to keep up with children and grandkids. Over the years, we had 4 children. About 10 years ago, we thought that we wanted to have one more child, and then we were going to call it there. The 4 kids that we had were amazing, but my wife really wanted a daughter. It was a stressful time in our marriage because getting pregnant was difficult. It was all the more stressful when my wife miscarried about 3 months after we found out she was pregnant. The entire family was broken about it. Even though we were upset, we all stayed together and honored the unborn child that my wife lost. My wife took it harder than anybody else in the family, but no matter what she said or did, I was there to help her. The reason I mention this is that when the shoe was put on the other foot, my wife was completely absent from me. Last year, I was in a really bad car accident and broke many bones in my body. All of the doctors said that it was a miracle that I survived. Even though I survived, there are some things in my life that will never be the same. I'm paralyzed from the waist down due to spinal damage that I sustained. Before I recovered some, I had 2 broken arms and a broken neck. I could hardly do anything on my own after the accident. I needed the support of my family to help me function. I could think and feel and talk, but I couldn't even go to the bathroom by myself. This is where the vows in sickness and in health really come into play. When my wife was struggling after the miscarriage, I was there every step of the way. When I literally couldn't feed myself, she would stay away from me and leave my children to take care of me. It took quite some time and a fair amount of rehabilitation for me to get to where I am today. I'm going to be wheelchair-bound for the rest of my life, which is something that I've been getting used to. Once I was able to get out of bed and roam around the house more, I started to notice some things were off. Aside from her avoiding me like the plague, she was very secretive about a lot of things going on in her life. For example, when she would go grocery shopping, she would be gone for 4 hours. When she got a phone call, she would answer it secretly and excuse herself to take the call outside. The entire time we had been married, she never did anything like that. On top of that, she had been getting very into her appearance. She wore makeup everywhere she went, made sure her hair was nice, and she dressed up. I didn't understand why a 20-minute trip to the grocery store required all of that, but I didn't say anything. While I was bedridden, I had been stewing over some of my feelings about her not taking care of me. I felt like she abandoned me, and I had a lot of issues with that. Whenever I tried to talk to her about it, she would just shut down. So eventually, I stopped. One night, she was supposed to be at her sister's house helping her pack up some old things from their parents. When she left, she told me she was only going to be gone for a few hours and that she would be back in time to cook dinner. Our kids weren't really cooking at the time. Our oldest was 17, and he had a job that he worked most nights, and the others were less than 13. None of them had really developed many cooking skills in their brief time on Earth. I couldn't cook in my condition, so we kind of relied on my wife to be there to cook for us. Time went on, and my wife didn't show up. I started to get worried, so I called her, and she didn't answer her phone. I called her sister and asked her if she was there, and she told me that she was. She mentioned that my wife had been drinking some wine and ended up passing out on the couch. I was annoyed at the idea that she would just sleep over at her sister's house without saying anything, but I was glad she was safe. We ended up having to splurge and order dinner that night, which we had really been trying to avoid because we were on a tight budget since I couldn't work. The following day, my wife came back home, and she looked like a mess. I made some jokes about how she must have had a rough night drinking, but I didn't want to cause any issues if she was feeling ill or hungover. It wasn't even that big of a deal, at least it wasn't until it happened again. The second time it happened, it was a very similar situation. I was understandably annoyed and frustrated that my wife had let something like that happen twice. I could understand every now and then spending the night at her sister's and sharing a few glasses of wine, but getting belligerently drunk to the point of passing out is an entirely different story. It felt immature and negligent to me. With everything that had been going on, I really started to suspect that my wife was up to something else. I had no reason not to believe she wasn't at her sister's house when she told me, but I thought more about the extra hours when she was supposed to be grocery shopping or the superfluous errands she would run. If she was having some kind of affair, she would have had ample time to do so. One day when she went to the grocery store, I swapped phones with her. We had the same phone, and my wife, for some strange reason, refused to put a case on hers. So, while she had her back turned, I took the case off my phone and put it on hers. She grabbed my phone and thought that it was her own. Everything went according to plan, and she walked out of the house with my phone in her purse. And I knew she was far enough away. I unlocked her phone and started looking through it. I found way more dirt on my wife than I ever thought I would have. I was honestly in disbelief when I saw how many other men she was talking to. She had downloaded a dating app on her phone and was talking to several men on that. In her bio and many of the messages, she mentioned being recently divorced and just looking for a good time. She gave her number out to a lot of different guys, and they exchanged pictures and flirty messages. It was clear from the context and the messages that she had met up with several of them. What struck me most of all in the messages was seeing one from somebody that I knew from work. I was humiliated to see that they had been together. He messaged my wife when he saw her and said he was sorry that we had been divorced, mentioning that he didn't know anything about it. My wife lied and told him that it was very recent, and they were trying to keep it quiet. They both then confessed that they had been attracted to each other for quite some time. The guy from my work was married to another one of my coworkers. Everyone in the office was married, so seeing him on a dating app was a major red flag. The most heartbreaking realization of all of it was seeing that she had started messaging these guys about a week after my accident. She hadn't been there for me at all to help me recover. Instead, she was going around behind my back and screwing around with all these other guys. I was irate when I found all of this out. She had completely forsaken our wedding vows and treated me as if I were gum on the bottom of her shoe. I gave 20 years of my life to her, dedicating myself to her entirely, and she stabbed me in the back. I gathered as much evidence from her phone as I could, and I emailed it all to myself so I could send it to the divorce attorney that I planned on contacting. I'm divorcing her, but I wanted to get back at her. I wanted to show the world who she really was. She wasn't the loving and doting soccer mom like everyone thought she was, and I wanted to rip that mask off to reveal her true colors. I put her phone back where I originally found it so I could pretend like I didn't know anything. She came back from the grocery store about 5 hours after she left with only a few bags of groceries. I actually had a birthday coming up before I found any of this out. I had already been telling my wife that I wanted to have some kind of party so I could get everyone that I knew together and spend time with them. It had been quite some time since I'd seen many of our friends and my coworkers, so I thought it would be a nice opportunity to do so. My intentions for the party had completely changed after I found out she was cheating. I still threw the party, and I made sure she invited everybody from my office, as well as all of our family members and friends. The day of the party came, and we were having a great time. Everybody was asking me how I was doing, telling my wife they were so happy that I was okay, and she was agreeing with them with a big smile on her face. I even heard her comment on how difficult the journey to my recovery had been for all of us. That was what really set me off, hearing her take credit for my recovery when she had absolutely nothing to do with it. It was infuriating. I immediately turned around and called her out for it. A lot of people in the crowd were obviously a little concerned about our argument, but they weren't saying anything. They were all just listening curiously. When I noticed everybody was listening, I turned right around and explained to them that my wife wasn't there for me. Instead, she was out sleeping with a bunch of random guys. My coworker, who I pointed to when I said it, his wife looked at him very confused. Then I elaborated more. I said a few quotes that were in their messages to each other, and my wife was clearly about to explode on me. My wife ended the party early and sent everyone home. The wife of my coworker poured a drink in her hair before leaving. She called her a flurry of names and walked out, telling her husband that she wanted him out of the house. I told my wife that I didn't want to talk about anything. I had all the evidence that I needed, and I was already in contact with a divorce attorney. Everything in the house was under my name, and I wanted her out as soon as possible. I told her that she would be getting nothing from me, to which she replied that she was entitled to half, if not more, when the divorce battle came around. I smugly walked away with everything I'd owned because she cheated. She wasn't entitled to a dime of my money. Child custody was easy because her kids hated her for everything she did. That was never my intent, but they saw a woman who cheated on their badly injured father and didn't want anything to do with her. I couldn't blame them, though. I do hope they will come around eventually to forgive her so they can have a relationship with her. As it turns out, her sister was covering for her all the nights that she said she passed out at her house. Her sister actually encouraged her to seek extramarital sex. Apparently, my wife had been complaining about how she didn't think we would be able to sleep together anymore, so her sister gave her some information about dating apps. First of all, I'm really happy to hear that you are making a recovery from your accident. It sounds like you still have quite a road ahead of you, but your kids are there to support you and help you. It's honestly heartbreaking to hear how absent your wife was during your recovery. She was supposed to be someone who you could count on to help take care of you in events like this, and she was MIA. It's disheartening to hear that your sister-in-law encouraged your wife to cheat on you so soon after your accident. Not that it's ever okay, but just a couple of months after you narrowly escaped death is despicable. I'm glad that you won in the divorce and that your children are on your side with everything. They probably saw all the same things that you did. Your children shouldn't have been forced to be your main caretakers. They are just children. Your wife was extremely selfish in her actions, and it really seems like she deserves everything that comes back to her about this. I wish you well, and I wish your children well. I hope you're able to move on from this and recover from your injuries quickly. Story 5. My wife and I had been married for 25 years before we got divorced. We had our struggles, but we always managed to work through everything and come out stronger. Neither of us wanted children when we got together. We were very career-focused and wanted to ensure that we could live happy lives with a moderate amount of wealth. About 5 years into our marriage, my wife had a change of heart. After careful consideration, we decided that we would try to have a child. It turned out to be the best decision of our lives. We had a baby girl. For the sake of this, let's call her Emily. She has been the light of our lives ever since she was born. Admittedly, we might have spoiled her quite a bit. She was an only child, and we wanted to make sure she had everything she wanted. That being said, she still had responsibilities that she had to take care of before she got things. When Emily moved away for college, it was one of the hardest days of our lives. Everything we had been doing for the past 18 years was dedicated to our daughter, and she was gone. We knew that it was just a step forward for her and that it wasn't the end of our relationship, but still, it was a bit of a struggle. After her first year in college, we had gotten used to her absence. We still missed her and valued the time we had when she would come home for breaks, but it was almost like we had the life we originally envisioned when we got married. We were traveling and doing things that we couldn't have done with a child. During Emily's sophomore year of college, she ended up studying abroad for a semester. She studied in Italy, where she met her boyfriend. Let's call him Joey. She had many boyfriends growing up, but none were quite like Joey. She adored him. The way she talked about him made it seem like she knew he was the one for her. My wife and I were both excited to meet him because he seemed to be an all-around great guy. Because he lived in Italy, getting together for dinner was a little difficult. But the summer after her sophomore year, we invited him to her lake house for our vacation. We had bought the lake house 5 years prior and had gone every summer since then. Joey was still a student, so we paid for his plane ticket to come and see us because we really wanted to meet him. My wife and I instantly liked him. He was charming and handsome, with a good head on his shoulders. He was studying to be a surgeon and was apparently at the top of his class. At the end of dinner, I was practically begging my daughter to marry him. Apparently, my wife also really liked him, but in a very different way than I did. I noticed during dinner that she would blush whenever he complimented her. At first, I thought it was kind of funny. He was a cute younger guy who was telling my wife that she looked good for her age, and my wife was falling for his charm. Throughout the rest of the week, the two of them developed an interesting relationship. It was very flirty, which made me uncomfortable, but I didn't want to draw too much attention to it for my daughter's sake. I mentioned it to my wife, and she told me that my concerns were nonsense. He was just Italian, and Italian men were like that. Maybe I was being naive, but I believed her. It was the 4th day of our vacation, and I ended up coming down with quite a bad migraine. I would get them from time to time over the years, and whenever I felt one coming on, the best thing for me to do was just to sleep. All the time in the sun was really not helping to keep it away, so I took off early from an outing to go home. They don't usually take too long to clear up as long as I can get some decent rest. I drew back the curtains in my room and put a pillow over my head after taking a few Excedrin, and I fell asleep instantly. I woke up hours later, completely unaware of what time it even was. Thankfully, my migraine was gone. Even though my migraine was gone, I was starving. I looked at the clock and saw that it was a little after midnight. So I tiptoed through the house to make a sandwich in the kitchen. My wife wasn't in bed when I left, though I figured she might have just passed out in a guest room or on the couch to avoid waking me. I walked over to the window and peeked through it. My wife was straddling Joey, and he was kissing her neck. She had been wearing one of those long dresses, and it was raised up above her hips just enough for me to see that they were indeed having sex. My wife was having sex with my daughter's boyfriend on the front porch of our lake house while my daughter and I were both upstairs asleep. I was completely frozen in place as I tried to figure out what to do. My wife was cheating on me with my daughter's boyfriend. I was at a complete loss for words. They continued what they were doing, and all I could think to do was pull out my phone and take a video of it for evidence against them. They were talking to each other while they were having sex and mentioning how they wanted to go inside to the basement. Again, that made me think that maybe it wasn't the first time they were together. I just went back upstairs and tried to think about what to do. If it wasn't the first time they were together, it couldn't have been some drunken mistake. Even then, it's unacceptable, but maybe it would be easier to digest if I knew they weren't in their right minds. To do it twice was extremely intentional. As I was lying in bed, I heard them make their way into the basement. There was a little bit of a ruckus as they walked through the darkness and made their way to the door. It almost sounded like an intruder, which is when I had the bright idea to catch them in the act. After hearing them, I jumped out of bed and grabbed the baseball bat that I had behind my door. I went into my daughter's room and quickly woke her up, telling her that I heard something in the basement. I told my daughter to stay where she was, but knowing her, that wasn't going to happen. I tiptoed down the stairs, pretending like I thought I was going to have to use my bat to fight off some criminal. My daughter was just steps behind me, peeking out to see what was going on. We made it to the basement, and all of the lights were on. We heard Joey and my wife having sex before we saw anything. They were hardly making an effort to be quiet. It was almost like they wanted to be caught. When we saw them, both my daughter and I screamed at them. They were completely naked, and there was absolutely no denying what was happening. Right away, I regretted waking up my daughter for that. I should have been the one to catch them, and I should have shielded her from what she saw, but I wasn't thinking. They tried to cover themselves and explain what was happening, but it was just senseless rambling. My daughter stormed away, and I followed behind her. We both started packing our things to go back home. We didn't care what happened with either Joey or my wife. We just needed to get out of the house. My wife tried to tell me that it was a mistake, but I just told her to leave me alone. I had a lot I needed to figure out, and I didn't need her in my ear trying to talk me out of my decision. My daughter and I drove back home in complete silence, both terribly upset about what we saw. When I got home, I started looking into divorce attorneys. My daughter helped me look after a few hours in the morning. We sat down together and had a conversation. She was mortified by what she saw, and she didn't think she was ever going to be able to look at her mother again, much less have a relationship with her. What I didn't know was that my daughter had spoken to my wife just a couple of days before about how much she loved Joey. They had been talking about marriage, and she thought it was a possibility for her. They had been considering marriage after she graduated. I was heartbroken for my daughter and completely furious with my wife. Cheating is never okay, but cheating with your own daughter's partner is disgusting. I went through with the divorce. My wife and I both worked, and we split all of the bills evenly for everything, so, in the divorce, everything was evenly divided. To this day, my daughter doesn't talk to her mother. What she did was completely unforgivable, and I can't blame her one bit for avoiding her. OP, I can't believe you and your daughter had to go through this. The person that your daughter trusted more than anyone in the world, her mother, completely betrayed her trust. It sounds like your wife was attracted to your daughter's boyfriend, and she willingly slept with him, knowing that it could ruin your marriage and their relationship. That is just an extremely selfish thing to do. The fact that she slept with him after your daughter mentioned wanting to marry him is despicable. You're supposed to be happy for your daughter, not jealous or envious of it enough to try and experience something with the partner. I can't even wrap my brain around betraying your own child's trust like that. I think you were right to be suspicious when she was being extra flirty with him. I can't blame you at all for thinking everything was okay. Nobody would suspect that someone would cheat on them in such a way. I really hope you and your daughter are able to move past this. I'm wishing you both well, and I hope you don't let these selfish partners hold you back from finding people who would actually be a good fit for you.